Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider TV. As mentioned, it's brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don Staley and his crew, they do such a great job for tourism here in West Alabama. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris. Remember last week, Rodney, we'd driven back from Indianapolis to be on the show, and still a little bit of a hangover from that tough loss to Georgia in the national championship game. But we've turned the page, and now you're already looking ahead to 2022, Rod. And as you know, this is the norm for Alabama. Each offseason, the Crimson Tide has to deal with players departing Tuscaloosa for the NFL draft. And so far, Bama has 9 players who will forego their remaining eligibility and enter that National Football League draft coming up this spring. And it's loaded with talent. I mean, you'd love to have these guys back in a perfect world, but that's not the way it is anymore. And it really helps the program when guys come here, they have success, and then they get to go into the draft and live out their NFL dreams. Here is a look at the players that have declared for the draft that could have returned for another season. Wide receiver Jameson Williams, he's expected to be a first-rounder. His running mate, John Mechie, the third. Offensive tackle, Evan Neal, could be the first overall pick, potentially, by Jacksonville. Fedarian Mathis, Christian Harris, Chris Allen, Jalen Armour-Davis, Josh Jobe, and Slade Bolden, all leaving Alabama for an opportunity in the National Football League. In addition to the players leaving for the draft, Alabama also has several players who have decided to enter the transfer portal, and some of these players have already chosen their new college destinations. This is the new world of college football that we've been talking about, Rod, for some time. Quarterback Paul Tyson transferring to Arizona State. Outside linebacker King Makuta to Arkansas State. Outside linebacker Drew Sanders in the SEC. He'll play against Bama up at Arkansas. Jaleel Billingsley is heading to Texas. Texas is coming into the SEC, but even though that's a few years down the road, Texas and Alabama play next season. Linebacker Jalen Moody has entered the transfer portal but has not announced a destination. The same for linebacker Shane Lee, who had 86 tackles as a freshman, and offensive lineman Tommy Brown, as well as wide receiver Javon Baker, all going into the transfer portal, Rodney. And let's also remember, before I bring you in for analysis, that 4 players entered the draft portal during the season and are already transferred elsewhere. Marcus Banks, the cornerback to Mississippi State. Xavier Williams, the wide receiver to Utah State. They open against Alabama next season. Pierce Quick, offensive lineman to Georgia Tech, and linebacker Jackson Bratton to UAB. All right, Rod. Now, there's a lot to digest here in terms of players that are leaving and players that are coming in, too, through the portal and through the recruiting ranks. But let's start with the player that maybe most surprised you that isn't returning, whether through the draft or the portal. Is anybody that stands out?
Well, the guy that really stands out to me, because I think he's got a chance to be a really fantastic player, is Drew Sanders. He's a guy that stepped in for Chris Allen, did a great job, and then he got injured against Ole Miss, missed a month of play, and Dallas Turner, I mean, the true freshman, was really fabulous. I mean, freshman All-American, had, I think it was 8.5 sacks, Gary. And, you know, I guess Drew Sanders felt like that he had lost his position, wouldn't be able to compete to start. I assume that's what he felt, and made the decision to move on. Maybe wanted a guaranteed spot. Who knows? But really, I wish he would have come back. I think he's a really good player. And I think Jalen Moody, the fact that he's an experienced guy, you know, bringing him back, especially with Christian Harris leaving, I think that would have been good if he would have decided to come back. But there are some young players that I think can step in those roles.
And in Sanders' case, you'll compete against him next year in the SEC West, or this year, I should say, next season. So that's the way it is now. Ronnie, as far as the draft is concerned, we know last year Alabama had 6 first-rounders. That tied the record. 8 players selected in the first 38 picks, which is unbelievable to me. Not that many projected this year in the first round. In fact, I think right now Jameson Williams and Evan Neal are the only projected first-rounders, but still a lot of guys going into the draft. As I said, you know, as a fan, you're a little disappointed. You'd like to see Jameson Williams, Evan Neal come back, but the reality of it is that's what they come to Alabama for, is an opportunity to play for championships and then go to the draft. Nick Saban actually sells that in recruiting. Hey, if you come here and do what you're supposed to do, you're going to have a chance to go to the NFL sometimes in 3 years.
Yeah. And again, I think there's a lot of people who are alarmed a little bit, Gary, by all these transfer moves. Some of the guys that are declared early, I know I've gotten text messages on Facebook about, Why would Slade Bolden leave? You know, he's a guy that's been here 4 years. He's put in his time. I think he's already got his master's degree, Gary. You know, they've got a lot of really good young players that I think at that position. You're bringing in some great young talent as slot receivers. Maybe it's just time for Slade. You know, I think he made that decision. It was time for him to move on. But I'm not really alarmed. Like you said, this is kind of the trend. This is the direction it's going. And you got to remember, too, you've got to stay at the 85. And Alabama's been really close on those numbers.
All right, I said there are players that are going into the draft and into the portal, but there are players that are coming in too. And we've talked about this. Alabama is very careful with how I'm just going to say the term, they cherry-pick the portal. They only want the creme de la creme. Last year, Jamison Williams and Henry To'oTo'o came in. Look at this football team without those two guys. They might not be in Atlanta. They made huge impacts. Now, Alabama already has 2 players coming in. Again, these are high-caliber players. Jahmyr Gibbs, running back from Georgia Tech, one of the best in the country, and Eli Ricks, the cornerback from LSU, was a freshman All-American a couple of years ago. All right, those 2 guys will come in and compete for starting jobs. Anybody else in the portal that you're keeping an eye on?
Well, right now I don't really know. You have to. It's difficult to figure out who exactly Alabama would be interested in. I know J.J. Pegues, I think he officially went in the portal, Gary. He's a guy that was a really good player at Auburn the last few years. Alabama recruited him really hard at the end when he came out of high school. I think Ole Miss has kind of got the inside track there, but I do believe that if he'll listen to Alabama, that'll be a guy that I think Alabama would be interested in because I think he's a veteran defensive lineman, a guy that they could bring in and probably plug in for some playing time right away. And there's going to be more that are going to enter the portal. Look, they can enter it until I think May 1st, I think is the deadline for players to enter the portal. So there'll be a lot more players. Don't forget now, Henry To'oTo'o and also Jamison Williams, the 2 you mentioned that transferred in last year. Both those guys entered after spring. So there's going to be some really talented players I think later on will enter the portal that maybe Alabama will be interested in.
So a lot of guys are leaving, either for the draft or the portal, but there are some really talented players that could have left early for the draft that decided to come back or could have left for the portal for that matter on both sides of the ball. Let's run down a list, Rodney, of guys that are returning, and these are some really good football players now. Safety Jordan Battle, might even been a late first rounder, second rounder, number 9 there. He's coming back. The linebacker we mentioned, Henry To'oTo'o. Defensive lineman DJ Dell. Safety DeMarco Helms. Tight end Cameron Latu. Tight end Kendall Randolph, who also plays some across the offensive line. Defensive lineman Byron Young. Offensive lineman Emil Ekiyor Jr. And offensive lineman Darian Dalcourt. Now, these are guys that could have gone. And this many of them coming back, that's certainly great for the 2022 team. All of those guys have played a lot of football. Many of them are starters.
Yeah, I mean, when you get your 2 safeties back, Battle, who was really a fantastic player at the end of the year, he really grew as a player, I think, Gary, and you mentioned his stock kind of rose. You know, that's really big. And when you talk about losing Job and Jalen Armour-Davis at the corner, don't forget now, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Kyrie Jackson started in that championship game. These guys have got really good experience now. They're going to get more experience this spring as they continue to develop and into the summer. But also you're bringing in, as you mentioned, Elias Ricks, a guy that was a 5-star corner coming out when he signed with LSU. So they're going to have a lot of really good players there at that cornerback spot.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And listen, I mean, it is just the way Alabama operates. Great players depart. Great players come in. And coaches, too. We know that Nick Saban has never brought back a staff intact in his entire time at UA. And already, cornerbacks coach Jay Valai is gone. He went to Oklahoma to be the co-defensive coordinator and specifically to head up the pass defense. Now, he spent just 1 year at Alabama, but he's a guy that moves around a lot. He was at Rutgers in 2019, Texas in 2020, Alabama in 2021, and Oklahoma in 2022. There may be some other coaches that leave. We know Bill O'Brien's interviewing for NFL head coaching jobs. But for Valai, listen, you get a chance to be a co-defensive coordinator at another great program. You can't blame him.
Well, you know, Gary, you mentioned he was at Texas. And then he came to Alabama. He was actually with the Eagles for one day.
That's right.
If you remember.
That's right.
And I think Houston a couple of weeks before that. So, again, he has moved around a lot. And look, Nick Saban's going to evaluate a lot of assistant coaches in terms of that cornerback position, Gary. You not only need a good corners coach, you need a guy that can really recruit well.
Yeah, so, and like I said, there could be more coaches on the move. We'll keep you up to date. Well, earlier today, and this is really a nice honor, Bryce Young was announced as the 2021 Manning Award winner. The award is presented to the best quarterback in college football, selected by the Manning family and the All-State Sugar Bowl. Young becomes the second consecutive Bama QB to win it. as Mac Jones took it last year, and they're the only two to win it since the award was started in 2004. But what else can you say about Bryce Young, Rodney? Nearly 5,000 yards, 47 touchdowns passing, 3 rushing, just 7 interceptions. Just had, and we've had some great quarterbacks around here the last few years. That season that he just had might be the best that we've ever seen.
You know, Gary, when you consider all the new pieces that he had around him, and his first year, obviously, as a starter, the inexperience that he had, I mean, he had a phenomenal year.
Absolutely, no doubt. All right, still to come on Tider Insider Television, Alabama basketball gets a boost off the bench as one of its top rotation players was able to come back and play this past Saturday against Mississippi State. They'll need him. But in terms of results, Alabama continues to struggle. Haven't seen this very often. Alabama, 3 straight losses with a big game tomorrow night against LSU. We'll talk about the Hoops team. And also, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets as always. The number you see right there on your screen, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen, or you can tweet at us. Use that hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the one, the only award-winning Tider Insider TV. We'll return right after this. Welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Well, this past Saturday, Alabama basketball lost at Mississippi State. It was a tough one, 78-76. Crimson Tide, Keon Ellis, that's a good look. Watch how close that ball came, being a buzzer beater. But it didn't go through, and Bama loses 78-76. Alabama now has dropped 3 games in a row. Keep in mind that last season, their SEC regular season and tournament championship season, they didn't lose back-to-back games, much less 3 in a row. Here was the key. Alabama continues to struggle from three-point range, just going 8 of 28. They got rebounded by 11, 43-32, and it was even in the rebounding category with about 8 minutes to go, which tells you down the stretch they just didn't get any rebounds. And they got a big one tomorrow night. 13th-ranked LSU comes into Coleman Coliseum. Bama now at 2-3 in conference play, Rodney. And, you know, tomorrow night's a huge game because I know it's just one game, but 3-3 compared to 2-4, that's a big, big difference. You're even at 500 or you're 2 games under. That's a big one tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think it's a momentum game too, Gary. You mentioned. I think it's really big that Alabama get some confidence, regain some confidence, whatever it might be that they're lacking. But I agree with you. I think and they've got a big stretch coming up.
Yeah, so. Fell out of the top 25 this week. And, you know, here's the deal, and this is the Auburn game, which they were, you know, tied at 75-75 with the ball and wound up losing a tough one there. When they don't make threes, now when they're making those threes, they beat anybody. We saw that with Gonzaga. We saw that with Houston. We saw that last season. But when you're not making threes and you're giving the other team second and third chance opportunities, you're going to struggle. I mean, they're not getting out in transition because they're giving up too many rebounds on their defensive end, the other team's offensive end. So when the ball goes through the net, you can't run. So they're not getting the easy baskets in transition. They're not making their threes, and they don't have a consistent low post score. In fact, they're getting pushed around physically. And that's a combination that is not going to win you a lot of games in this league.
Well, they better get it turned around.
Yeah, they had in a hurry because, again, this is a league that, you know, nobody's going to feel sorry for you. And you got to go out there and take it. And I know they're a 3-guard team, a perimeter-based team, but I think, Rodney, the lack of inside presence right now is really hurting this team. Well, it's time now for Coach Talk. Head coach Nate Oates began at Alabama, and one of the first things that he incorporated into the program was that hard hat mentality, blue-collar points. So it's not surprising that Oates believes that toughness is the key to getting this team back on track.
We definitely have to become tougher. I think some guys that are heavy in the rotation that have won at a high level with us in the past realize that. When you see guys being more physical on checkouts, we need to see guys willing to take charges, get on the floor for loose balls, hustle after plays. We've definitely seen it in practice. Now we need to see it in the game.
And some good news in that regard. Forward James Rojas is back. He played 17-plus minutes in his first game back off the bench against Mississippi State. 6 points, 2 rebounds, and 2 steals. But his biggest contribution may not show up on the stat sheet. Just what Oates said. He's tough, man. He's tough. He's physical. He doesn't back down. And his mentality is already having a positive effect on his teammates. They'll need that tomorrow night, as we said, against LSU at home. The Alabama women's basketball team missing 4 players on Sunday at home against Florida, including starting point guard Hannah Barber, and the Tide lost its 4th straight game, 85-77. Bama dropped to 10-7 overall, 1-5 in the conference. Megan Abrams led the team in scoring for the 8th time this season with 22. Alabama had the lead in the 4th quarter, early in the 4th quarter by 9, but they folded down the stretch, and only made one of their last 11 shot attempts, so both basketball teams struggling right now. Well, still to come on TITV, Alabama Gymnastics makes history. We'll explain when we come back. Also, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the number 205-348-9882. Let's hear from you, Tider Insider Nation. We'll be right back to our beautiful studios inside the Digital Media Center in Bryant-Denny Stadium with more TITV after this break. The number 11 Alabama Gymnastics squad came within less than a tenth of a point of knocking off number 2 Florida in Gainesville on Sunday afternoon, 197 to 196.925. It was that close. In a meet that came down to the final routine from both teams, Alabama was in the lead late in the meet's final rotation before the Gators came up with back-to-back perfect tens to secure the victory. And the event made history as it was telecast by ABC, becoming the first regular season dual meet in college gymnastics history to be televised by an over-the-air network. Alabama hosts Kentucky in its first home meet this Friday night, and it'll also be alumni night at Coleman Coliseum. But what a big day on Sunday. Before we head to the phone lines, writing a quick football recruiting note, Jaleel Hurley, the outstanding 5-star defensive back out of Florence High School in North Alabama, had set a commitment date for this Saturday. He has now postponed that, although everything indicates that Alabama's the leader there.
Well, I think, Gary, sometimes these guys make these commitments a year in advance. You know, that's a long way to go. They're going to be recruited really hard, so I think that's probably a wise decision. All
right, let's get to our phones, and John over in Bessemer first up. Hey, John, what's up, man?
Gary, what's going on, man?
You know it, pal.
Hey, man, I hate we lost, man, but hey, it's going to be better there. It's going to be better next year, buddy. I want to talk about recruiting, man. When is the National Signing Day going to be on?
Okay, John.
I'll talk later, buddy.
All right, brother. Good to hear from you. Hey, well, they had the one in December. They got another one coming up the first Wednesday in February. Quite honestly, John, the reality is the new early period has become the main period. I'm not saying Alabama won't sign a player or two in February, but they may not.
No, it wouldn't be a surprise at all.
They got a good class already in the books.
Yeah, right. And I don't think anyone should be alarmed by that at all. I know a lot of people keep asking who are they going to sign in February, but here's the thing. I think most of what's going to happen now is going to be the transfer portal for Alabama. That's going to be most of the additions now. And again, that may not take place till later in the spring.
All right, we'll have more phone calls. Get to some emails coming up. There's the phone number again. Give us a ring. We'll be right back with more TITV. You stay with us. Alabama men's tennis off and running for the spring season and opened up in fine fashion with wins over Mercer and Sanford. In the match against Mercer, the Crimson Tide got 6 of 7 points, including 5 of 6 singles matches. In the match against Sanford, Alabama scored come-from-behind victories in singles play from Flip Planisic and Zach Foster to beat the Bulldogs 5-2. Men's tennis is back to work this weekend and another home match taking on Oklahoma State at 6 p.m. This weekend at the Roberta Allison Bumgarner Indoor Tennis Facility. And welcome back to TITV with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Let's go out to the phone lines and talk to Jeremy up in Coleman. Hey, Jeremy.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing well.
Hey, just got a comment on Coach Saban's political beliefs.
Okay.
I just kind of wished he would just stick to football. You know, we've all got different political beliefs and religious beliefs, and we just, you know, I've been an Alabama fan for 47 years, and I just think we need to stick to the subject at hand. You know, we pay him to be a football coach. I just kind of wish he would stick to that because we all got different beliefs, and when you cross that line, it's kind of hard to come back from.
All right, Jeremy. And I don't get into politics much. I'm a sportscaster. I'll say this. He's an individual. He's a man. He's got a right to have his beliefs. And just because he's paid to be a football coach doesn't mean that he's just got to coach football. I mean, you know, and again, I've never talked to him about his political beliefs. I guess this is in reference to the letter that he was part of to West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin in regards to Federal Voting Rights Act, and that's really all I can say about it. I don't know. I don't have a problem with Coach Saban expressing his opinion if he wants to do that.
Yeah, but, you know, Gary, I thought the letter was private initially.
And I think it got out.
Okay,
yeah.
Well, so, again, I think privately he made his support of this, and, you know, I don't think maybe it doesn't seem that he intended for it to be public, Jeremy, but again, I'm with Gary. I mean, certainly he's got his opinions.
That's right. All right, let's get to an email. And this is from Ray in Tuscaloosa. What is Malachi Moore's status? Is he still on the team? He's not playing any. And, you know, he didn't play much down the stretch. Ray, of course, was an all-SEC freshman in the secondary for Alabama. I think this is a case of, quite frankly, some other guys, Brian Branch and others, played better than Malachi. And you know how it is at Alabama. Just because you're in the rotation one day doesn't guarantee you that you're going to be in the rotation going forward if other players play better and beat you out.
Have to earn it every day. And again, I think Malachi Moore had one of the best freshman seasons around here for a secondary player to be able to come in the way he did in 2020. He was fantastic. But Brian Branch is a really good player, plays those roles too. Hopefully Malachi Moore get back in that secondary, Gary, because he's a really good player.
All right, let's get to another email real quickly before we have to get to the break. And this is from Jason in Tuscaloosa. Who'll be the left tackle next season? Great question. Evan Neal moving on to the NFL. Rod, who you like there?
Well, that's a great question. You know, they've got a lot of really good young players that I think will compete maybe for that position. I wish I could answer the question. You know, do they possibly go in the portal if one came available? You know, who knows? I think J.C. Latham's a young player that maybe will have an opportunity to compete at that spot, even though he played right guard, he played right tackle. He's probably got the athleticism to play that left tackle spot. Maybe redshirt freshman Tommy Brockemeyer gets a look. You know, again, Gary, right now, that is the one spot on the offensive line that we really don't know.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and emails. We'll be back to wrap up TITV on a beautiful, chilly night in Tuscaloosa right after this. Well, Alabama cheerleading took home its third Division 1A All-Girl National Championship Sunday evening at the 2022 College Cheerleading and Dance Team National Championship. How about that? The Tide's co-ed squad earned a runner-up finish. Congratulations to head coach Jennifer Vaughn Thrasher and all those cheerleaders, man. That is absolutely awesome. National champions again. All right, and that is going to do it for this edition of Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. A reminder that if you missed this show or want to catch it again or tell somebody else to watch it, we'll have a replay tonight at 10:30 after the news at 10, or find it online anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching. We're going to leave you tonight with some pictures of Alabama softball's first workout as the season is right around the corner and the Crimson Tide will be looking to get to Oklahoma City for the national championship tournament yet again. Have a great night, everybody. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday here on TITV. Roll Tide.